is Armageddon before or after the resurrection and subsequent entry into the kingdom? This is like the JW position where God himself, possibly through his Christ, destroys all the ungodly.
Well, Armageddon is a gathering of the armies who then descend upon Jerusalem. I think most likely the saints will have been glorified at that point. The moment that Jesus arrives in the sky, is visible in the sky at the single 1 second coming, the saints of all the ages will be glorified, immortalized in a split second, in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. And then I think they will be involved in destroying the armies who will have advanced upon Jerusalem. So I'm not going to be precise about the exact chronological order there. I do know that Jesus will defeat those armies who come from the north, gather in the north, and they come down and try to attack Jerusalem. Jesus is going to destroy them because he's going to then mount the Mount of Olives. He's going to probably come up on the Mount of Olives from the east and step on it. And his feet will stand in that day when he steps on that mount. And then there will be a massive earthquake, as you know, in the book of Revelation. And Jesus will then take over the government of the world, which will be entirely under new management. All the nations and tongues and languages and empires on earth will come to have to obey the saints, not just God and Jesus. I know that. But the privilege of being elect is that you're going to be put in a position to make the world do what it's supposed to do, because you'll be immortalized at that time. So I recommend, as an important verse, Daniel 7:27. All nations will serve and obey them. It reads correctly in the Aramaic, and the RSV gets that right in some of the other translations too. Not just obey God and Jesus, we know that, but they're going to have to obey the people of God, who in verse 18 of Daniel 7 will be receiving the kingdom. Don't you know the saints are going to manage the world? And Jesus said, "Fear not, little flock of true believers. My Father has been delighted to promise you that future kingdom, and it will happen at the second coming."
In Revelation 16, so this is after the 6 bowls of wrath, just before the 7th bowl of wrath. We have this gathering, it says, of the beast and the false prophet, but not Satan, it looks like.
Satan is behind all of this activity of false prophets.
So then they gather all these kings together, and it sounds like it's just before the parousia, because it says, "Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake." So they gathered together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon.
Mountain of Megiddo.
Right. We know that the great day of God appears in the Old Testament as the great day of the Lord.
Yes, and in the New Testament as the day of the Lord also, or the day of Messiah. It makes no difference.
It looks like this same event is repeated in Revelation 19, and here clearly it's the parousia. And then it says in 19, "I saw the beast, the kings of the earth, their armies assemble to make war against him who sat on the horse." So Armageddon appears to coincide with the parousia of Christ.
Yeah. Absolutely. Certainly isn't 7 years earlier. There's no invisible second coming 7 years before that. 7 years before, the Great Tribulation will not actually begin till 3.5 years into that final 7-year period. But at the beginning of the 7 years, we would expect a temple to be rebuilt, and the Antichrist will then work in that temple building. 3.5 years into that 7-year period, that seemingly gentle and benign anti-Christian figure will turn out to be a monster, and then the Great Tribulation will ensue for 3.5 years. I think the second half of that 7-year period. And then Jesus comes back at the end of that period, of course. So we are classical futurists, post-tribulationists. Of course, Jesus doesn't pour his wrath on the church. That's absurd. You don't pour the wrath on the bride. So the wrath is poured on the evil people who are still fighting Jesus, even at his visible second coming.